Japanese multimedia artist, designer, and filmmaker Sputniko. She creates works on the themes of technology, gender, and feminism, specializing in the field of speculative and critical design. Her video work and multimedia installations span a wide variety of themes, including biotech, gender performance, and interspecies communication. It's my pleasure inviting Sputniko to speak about how her artwork, Red Silk of Fate, reinvents the East Asian concept of fate, where the red thread becomes a reality through scientific interventions in a probable future. Sputniko, please.
Okay, hi everyone. Hello, I'm Sputniko, and I think in the beginning I'm going to go through briefly about who I am, my background. So Sputniko, that's not my real name, that's my artist name. So I was born Hiro Ozaki in Japan. So my dad's Japanese, my mom's British, and my parents are both mathematics professors. So they were writing a math paper together, and then some formula worked out, so I was born, thanks to mathematics. So in my house, my parents were always talking about maths, research. So I had a lot of computers in the house, which I worked with, I played around with. So I loved computer programming a lot since I was really small. I loved maths, physics. So surprisingly, I'm an artist, but I started out my life as a math geek. So I grew up in Japan, but I went to study in London. So I went to Imperial College to study mathematics and computer science, which was amazing. I got to study artificial intelligence or bioinformatics, all these amazing new tech and science. But when I went to study there, at the same time, I realized that in my computer science class, there were about 100 people, and there were only 9 female students in my classroom. And most of the students studying at Imperial, I think it changed a bit now, maybe it's better gender-wise, also race-wise, but it was mostly white men, and then some Chinese students, but it was very male-dominated. And at the time, I thought, wow, technology and science, they're amazing, changing so many things about our society, our lives, but it's being changed by a very narrow group of people with a very narrow perspective. And because it's lacking this voice of diversity, because it's not being inclusive, it looks like problems and issues of minorities, such as women or other race are not properly reflected in the development of tech and science. So I started thinking about these issues, and then so I'm a musician, so I started writing music, and I started singing about tech in London clubs and concerts. And surprisingly, Debbie Ding used to be a music organizer in London. So in 2008, you booked me as a musician. This is crazy. We met after 15 years. Those were the days when we were just young and playing gigs in London. So Debbie knows me as a musician in London. So I was singing about Googling your crush's name, or I was just singing about tech. And a slide is missing, but anyhow. Okay, so I was thinking about tech, but I loved performing music and expressing my ideas about the future, so much so that I studied in RCA for my master's. So Royal College of Art. Debbie, we went to the same course a few years after me. So I went to a course called Design Interactions, which was an amazing course led by Professor Anthony Dunn and Fiona Raby. I think quite a lot of you already know about them. They really influential in the ideas of speculative design, critical design. So while studying at RCA, I produced several works, like the menstruation machine, which is a machine that allows biological men to experience the process of menstruation, or Crowbot, which is a machine that allows humans and crows to communicate between interspecies and all that. And then those works, at the time when I graduated, was 2010. So that's like the beginning of YouTube and Twitter. So my work went really viral online. And it just, like, I was a student, but my work spread everywhere. And then suddenly I became like a social media pop icon in Japan. And then different curators like Paolo Antonelli from MoMA discovered me, or Yuko Hasegawa from Museum of Contemporary Art Tokyo. So then they invited me to show in MoMA or Museum of Contemporary. So it was like graduating from RCA was like a sudden debut into showing in museums. But I think it was really thanks to the beginning of social media in 2010. It's like YouTube and Twitter really pushed me forward. So that happened, and then in 2013, I was invited to the MIT Media Lab to become an assistant professor there, and I founded my own group called Design Fiction Group. So I was at MIT for 4 years teaching students, looking after projects, and after MIT now I'm associate professor in Tokyo University of Arts. And other than teaching, I also like show different artworks. I recently founded a women's health startup. So I'm a startup CEO, which we might discuss later at the panel. You see, I told you a little bit about the menstruation machine. You know, I had really strong interest on how menstruation, menopause, pregnancy, all these health issues that women need to deal with, they were often ignored or sort of completely silenced because of taboos that existed in society, especially Asia, like Japan, or I'm sure it's similar in Singapore. So there's this large lack of knowledge of how to deal with women's health issues. So I created a startup to help people learn about their women's health issues, contraceptive pills, fertility treatments. So right now, 80% of the time, I'm a startup CEO. I'm getting really busy, but I guess I should move on to talk about the work I'm showing in ArtScience Museum. So in the new Eden exhibition, I am showing the Red Silk of Fate, the shrine. I don't know if you've seen the space with a Shinto-like shrine made with fabric, red fabric. So that work originally initiated when I started thinking about how biotechnologies, the recent developments of genetic engineering, bioengineering, it's almost really changing how we view life or organisms. It's like we used to think that living things could only be created by, mythology or gods, but now scientists in the lab, they're designing new living things. So I was thinking about that, and then here, I'm sure if you grew up in Japan or Singapore, China, Korea, I think you know about the mythology of red string of fate. So Unmei no Akaito in Japanese, or Hongsheng in Chinese, I think. And it's mythology that says two people destined to meet each other romantically have this invisible red string tied in between them. So this is something I grew up in Japan, like watching anime, manga, films about red string of fate. And I think most people think that this is something that's happening only in mythology and fantasy, right? But like I said previously, I started becoming interested in these questions, like what are the implications of these new emerging biotechnologies, and how will these new bioengineering technologies influence our ideas of spirituality or traditional mythologies, beliefs, and value systems. And especially since when I started thinking about this idea, I was living in Boston because I was at MIT. And obviously, how the Western society view these new sciences and the Eastern society view these sciences, I felt were very different. I think I felt this difference more because I'm half British and half Japanese. I grew up with two different perspectives. And I felt like, wow, like science and tech, especially recently when we look at AI or bioengineering, I think a lot of these new tech and science, some of them make us feel uncomfortable. But I think that boundary of feeling comfortable or not comfortable, I think that's really affected by what kind of mythology or religion we grew up with. And I think the Western perspective and the Eastern perspective have different boundary to these science and tech. But, you know, in the Time magazine, they had this very famous cover, like God versus science, you know, the view of bioengineering completely challenging God and religion. But growing up in Japan, it felt like, no, I don't think that's exactly how the Eastern religions see bioengineering. Maybe it's kind of different. So anyhow, through this project, I didn't want to make a conclusion, but it was an experiment for me. I wanted to ask a question through this process. So this is a video I took in the lab of Professor Hideki Sezutsu. So he's a professor of Tokyo University, and he has developed this technology of bioengineering silkworms. So you can see the silkworm's eyes are glowing red and green. Well, they're glowing red and green because by adding the DNA of a glowing jellyfish or a red glowing coral, you can make these silkworms' eyes glow red and green, and also the silk that they produce glow different colors. So this is a picture. It's amazing, right? They actually managed to develop like blue, yellow, pink, green, different kinds of silkworms. And this is real. This looks like science fiction, but this is what the silk shed looks like. And this is a photo taken in Maebashi in Japan. So when I saw this, I was really amazed, and I contacted Professor Sezutsu, and we started talking about collaborations and how I might be able to work with this technology. So in the beginning, can you see? Oh yeah. I actually took the silk and I collaborated with Kyoto kimono craftsmen. So we use the silk to make these traditional kimono fabrics. So I started experimenting with this material. But after a while, we started building this close relationship. So I asked Professor Sezutsu, wait, I have an idea. Can we engineer silkworms by adding a DNA of a red glowing coral and also a DNA that produces oxytocin? And I don't know how many of you have heard oxytocin. That's called the love hormone. So oxytocin, it's produced when you're in love or when you're hugging someone or when you have this sense of trust and affection. So I asked him, can you add a DNA that produces oxytocin in the silk? So the silk glows red, but contains that love hormone. So it's a little bit like that mythology of red string of fate. So when I asked him that, he looked at me like, are you crazy, Sputniko? What? Red silk of fate? But then he said, actually, Sputniko, I think our lab can actually make that. So after the discussion, he started engineering with these different DNAs. And this is a photograph he sent me just 8 months after the first discussion. And this is the world's first bioengineered silk that glows red because of red fluorescent protein. It also contains oxytocin, the socially bonding love hormone. Just one reminder about oxytocin. Just because it contains oxytocin, you know that love can be very complex. It's very complicated. So just by going to the shrine, it doesn't make you fall in love with everyone. But also oxytocin, to get the maximum effect, you actually have to stick the silk up your nose because you can take in the oxytocin better through your nose, which is not a romantic gesture. So by doing this to your someone you love, maybe that's not going to give you a better chance of having that bonding. But anyhow, so it's a very symbolic thing. I wouldn't say just because of this silk, everyone falls in love with each other, and that doesn't happen. But it was very interesting for me to be able to create this symbolic silk through science. And it's something that we imagined that only existed in fantasy and fiction, right? But through a collaboration between artists and scientists, wow, like in just 8 months, we managed to make something. So after making the silk, I thought, well, I have to ask the expert of mythology about this. So I visited Kanda Myojin Shrine in Tokyo, which is like one of the oldest shrines there. It's a 1,300 years old shrine. And the reason why I asked Kanda Myojin was that despite being such an old, traditional, popular shrine, they're very famous for selling these interesting amulets called the IT protection spirits. So if you buy these and if you stick them on your MacBook, it's supposedly protect your MacBook from viruses. Very cheap compared to some other virus softwares, but it's supposed to be protective of any troubles that happen to your iPhone, MacBook. And this is very popular. It's sold for 1,000 yen, about $10. So I asked the shrine about this silk and also about the reason why they're selling these amulets. And the answer I got was quite interesting. So they said, as a very old shrine, they thought that tradition, even something that's traditional, can only continue to exist if it updates with the current society, so current perspectives and viewpoints. And I don't know if you have this in Singapore, but in Japan, it's very popular to have car accident protection amulets. So these are amulets that protect you from being hit by a car or any car accidents. And they're sold in almost all the shrines. And they said, but actually, cars only appeared in a society in the last 100 years. It's not that old cars. But now all the shrines have the car protection amulets. So as Kanda Myojin, we believe it's very necessary for us to make these computer iPhone protection amulets because we're using them every day. So, which was an interesting answer. So I said, okay, then I actually created this red silk with the scientist. And from your Shinto perspective, how do you feel about this? And again, the answer was quite interesting. So Kanda Myojin, the priest, said, well, in Shinto, we view that there's a spirit in all living things, or not even non-living things like wind or rock or tree, mountain. We believe that there's a spirit in everything. So the silk, it's interesting that together with the scientists, you bioengineered a completely new living thing. But as Shinto priests, we think that there's a new spirit in the new living organism. So we'd like to accept this as a part of new Shinto world. And actually, Sputniko, would you like to collaborate with us to make a love amulet together using the silk? So I got an offer of collaboration, and which is I thought was quite different from this kind of God versus science narrative that I was always used to living in the US. And I think one thing I wanted to talk about is that I'm sure New Eden is all about this topic, but technology and science, I think for us to better understand what's happening in our society and what's going to come in the future, it's so important to understand all these different narratives of religion, spirituality, morals, because that really affects what we feel comfortable and not comfortable. So in this work, I really wanted to show that there are alternative narratives about bioengineering and religion, spirituality. So I created, actually, I'm a musician, I'm also a filmmaker, so I created a music video about this red silk fate. So it's featuring this main character, Tamaki. She's a genetic engineer, but she has this huge crush to Sachihiko in the lab, which I'm actually playing. I'm Sachihiko. She has a big crush, but Sachihiko doesn't seem to notice that she has a crush. So she decides, maybe there's no red string of fate in between me and Sachihiko. Well, then, if there's no red string of fate, I'm going to go into the lab and actually engineer my own red string of fate. So she actually makes it, and then she sews it onto her favorite scarf. She wraps it around her, and then she runs out the lab to meet Sachihiko. But in the process, very strange mythical powers start to gather around Tamaki. And when I created the script, I was reading the script of Japanese mythology, Chinese mythology, or Greek mythology. And I think a lot of mythology had very crazy narrative. So my music video is a little bit crazy, but I think it's on par with other mythology. So I'm going to play the video. It's 5 minutes. If the light can go, Laura, that would be great. Can we have like darker, less light? けどあなたはホットで私はマノット以上却下な恋だからカイトなんて無縁なんだからなんならば作ってもいい運命の赤い糸折れちゃったベイビー好きであってたのに運命のレイニー私夢のようにザラビみたいに恋愛ホルモンオキシトシンを作る遺伝子をこの卵に注射すれば恋に落ちる運命の赤い糸生み出せるはずカイコの目が光れば成功のサインなんだけど折れちゃったベイビー好きであってたのに運命のレイニー私夢のようにザラビみたいに私ももう大人だしオキシトシンくらいで恋が叶うなんて恋はそんな簡単な話じゃないだなんてそりゃ分かってるんですけどでもそんなことやってみないと分かんないじゃないですか失敗は成功のもとだって施術教授も言ってたじゃないですかだから私作っちゃったんですねえ新しい神話一緒に作ろうよそうしそう愛ないとは言わないで高鳴る野望は止まんない今後当然なんても言わないで運命なんて結果 alright Thank you. Yay, thanks. Thank you. And that's exactly the silk that's used in the shrine. So I'll show you this. So using the silk, we created the installation first in Hong Kong, 2021, and now finally in Singapore, 2023. And what was really nice is that when I made the work, I first showed it in Japan. Obviously, Japanese people know about Red String of Fate. And then I show it in Hong Kong, and then all the Chinese people are like, yeah, like the red string. And then, so, which is really nice to feel this connection through Asia of understanding. And I would love to tell you about, so when I made this film, I first presented in MIT, like sponsor meeting, and I remember the blank faces of some professors are like, what? What did I just see? But it's nice that we're seeing diverse viewpoints, perspectives discussed in science, tech, mythology, and I hope if you haven't seen it, I hope you enjoy the installation in the museum. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Sputniko. Our next speaker, Irene Agrivina, is an Indonesian artist, technologist, and open systems advocate and educator. Irene is a founding member and the co-director of House of Natural Fibre in Yogyakarta, a creative community of artists, architects, scientists, activists, and designers who address social, cultural, environmental issues through science and technology while pushing the boundaries of art and authorship. She's also the co-founder of XX Lab, an all-women collective whose work focuses on the arts, science, and free technology. I'm delighted to welcome Irene for a talk on how House of Natural Fibre reimagines Lakshmi from the archives of Hindu mythology as an otherworldly giver of nourishment and sustenance in their new commissioned work for the exhibition Galactica version 2 Dharma Garden. Irene.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I hope you're not too sleepy to hear my talk. But thank you, Sputniko. It was very interesting. So I will just continue. So like I said, I'm Irene Agrivina. In here, I will represent and on behalf of my colleagues at HONF. And yeah, we started. So I will tell about HONF. What is HONF do? It's actually, when people ask what is HONF, actually we got confused. So we just say that HONF is the one who gets excited about things that no one else cares about. Because we started at 1999 when we were young, crazy, and jobless. Because that was after Reformation, and mostly the founder is graduate from the art school and have a basic in design. And after Reformation, there was no job, so for designers. So we have this as kind of like a lab or studio in the small city in Indonesia called Yogyakarta. So we have this garage that open 24 hours, and then people always come and go. And then because we are in the central, and Yogyakarta is divided into two, like south and the north, which is south is more hype, all the clubs, all the malls, and at the south is the north is the hype, and the south is more like artists and academics, and we are in the middle. So many people actually come, their background is scientists, designers, and artists. And some people actually came and say that, so you have a hackerspace. Well, we have no idea what is hackerspace. And they also call because and then we work with the arts and technology, and we combine arts and technology, and they call, so you are actually new media artists. Well, that time we have no reference about what is new media and what is like a hackerspace. And then at 2011, and the community is become bigger, and then we call ourselves, and then we become a collective, and then we divided into 3 labs because that garage couldn't afford us anymore. There are a lot of fightings and that. And then rather than we kill each other, so we divided ourselves into 3. So we have FUFOC, the Extraterrestrial Study Center, which will have an exhibition in next month, also in here. And then Hon Fab Lab is the first Fab Lab in Southeast Asia. And then we have a Hon Factory, that more gallery, and then a place for discussing about media and digital culture. And this is what we do in our lab. And we do also a lot of workshops. We open our lab, and then people can come and then do whatever they want. But mostly, actually, they want us to do for them. And it's a lot of experiments also, mostly fail. And we work also together for some joint research with some universities from the local in Yogyakarta or Indonesia or abroad. And I will give some example of one. This is some of our previous project. This is one of our favorite. It's at 2010, actually, the Indonesian government raised the tax of alcohol. And then from the cheapest wine was $1 into $5. And then we couldn't afford to buy that. And then actually many people like mix between mosquito repellent, rubbing alcohol to just get drunk. And then there are thousands of people died because of that. So we create this. It's called intelligent bacteria Saccharomyces cerevisiae. It's very simple. It's like Sputniko. We just came to one professor and asked, we want to drink actually, but we don't want to die. He said, that's very easy. Actually, like the second graduate student can do that very easy. And then he taught us actually how to make wine from local fruits. And then, but we are the second biggest Muslim country in the world. But then how actually it become can be very smooth. But there are also actually like some stories that Indonesian that time have a drink culture. So we play also with that mythology and tales, and then come this installation. And this is another project called Micronation Macronation. It's actually at 2013. It's about smart farming, and then we have hope actually at now, at 2013, if Indonesian government have our system, and then at this year actually Indonesia will have sustainable in food and energy. They receive our proposal, but they just pray that the project went good. So, and then we work with 3 farming area to make this project. So we grab the data from the satellite. So we hack the data from the satellite, and we make kind of like a local net. So the farmers actually know actually how the best time to farm and then the best time to harvest. And then we built also supercomputer that connected among this farming area. And then we also make a kind of like a system actually, so they can have a sustainable food and energy, and turn the hay. Usually they just burn it into bioenergy. And this is another project about 4 rivers, actually in main 4 rivers in Yogyakarta, which is very important because these rivers actually goes to the South Sea that connected to a very famous goddess in there called Green Goddess. But this river is actually very polluted, so we make, again we work also with microbiology professor how actually to clean this river with bacteria, and then this installation, and then show actually how the difference when we make when we give the bacteria to the water, and then how the effect to the plants. But then HONF is boys club. like 80% as boys. And then once actually like a friend of mine came and asked, so she's from Miss Baltasar Laboratory in Vienna, asked, and then how actually the feeling like you work with the art, science, and technology, which is like mainly like male perspective, and there is male gaze, and then is there like any feeling like any uncomfortable, and we said like no, like we are kind of like authoritative actually, all the girls at home, but then we are thinking again like is there any why we don't have this question actually, that's become a question. And then we started actually a workshop for female and trans that time, and then after that, after the workshop, we know that actually there is a difference, like from all these long years, actually we always working at the male case. So we, after the workshop, we continue that, and we make kind of like a collective that working also at the art, science, and free technology. It's called XX Lab, and then one of the project that we develop is returning actually the soya waste, because Indonesia is the second largest like tofu the consumption in the world, and then there are also many tofu factories, and then they just turn the waste into a river. It is very polluted, and I think for 100 years there is no solution for that, and then that's very bad for the environment. And then with a simple biological process, actually XX Lab turn this liquid waste into this material, kind of like a new material that can be used for fashion and other things. So this is XX Lab. It's like a spice girl. We want to make a band actually at the first, but we didn't succeed. So we turned into a hacker. And then this is another project actually that recently that's also like connected to the project right now. It's called the ungovernable structures. So we play with this 5 kingdom of life to make a sustainable structure. So, and then we use that also, this 5 kingdom of life, to perform it into and generate it into sound and visual. So this is the structure. Actually, it was a bit failed and was shown in Stuttgart at Public Art Festival. And this is the theme. And yeah, we will talk about this. Galactica version 2, Dharma Garden, that maybe you will see or you already see. And this is the version 1 when we show it at in Yogyakarta and Istanbul that time. This is actually about like terraforming at outer space, like how actually if we occupy the space, it's like a voyager, it's like a dream, the science fiction that human always have, that we going to intergalactica. So it's kind of like fulfill our dream at home, that how if we go outer space and what situation and conditions. So we make this installation and video about this at 2013 and 2011. And then when we receive actually the invitation, like we thought that there is maybe something wrong. That's why we always want to go like outside, like out. And then why we always curious about the connection. Maybe if we saw like the past, like we in Java actually always hear about the tale and about mythology, about the goddess. And one of the goddesses maybe is also famous in Asia, called Lakshmi. And this is so in the temple in East Java, there is a temple that made special by a king for her wife, that her wife represent Lakshmi. And this is, you can see that the Lakshmi actually give from the breast actually the water to the earth. And surround that area is actually a lot of mosques, and then people came here in East Java actually to pray and or to get the amulet or to have power, and they do like samadhi in there. I don't know what is samadhi. Meditation in this site, and then we are thinking actually about also like the mosques that surround that area actually to give an addition, because why there are a lot of mosques and why this connection about this Lakshmi goddess and the mosque, and then again we go to the professor and ask like what is this mosque about, and he said that this mosque is actually like a pioneer of the earth, and then the story is almost the same with the Lakshmi that came from the sky with the Batara Guru, and then there is a life on earth, and then so from that actually we can like play with this mythology, and then these terraforming ideas that we play at the before at this installation, how actually these terraforming ideas come alive, and then how people actually can understand that maybe we are the alien, maybe we are come from above, and that is the connection actually that actually our ancient and our ancestor always say that this Devi Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth, and through this cultivation and terraforming approach, we can create a more balanced and sustainable environment where various types of plants and creatures can thrive. And this is also can inspire people to contemplate and to give an honor to the relationship between human and the universe. And then so we can see actually in this installation that this concept also reflects how cultural and spiritual values can be integrated with environmental preservation and sustainability. So we call actually this Dharma garden, because we know this Lakshmi have also like understanding about Dharma, and then the connection actually between Hindu and then now religion, and how the practice actually in Java we mix between Muslim and then Hindu and Buddha, and then we call that actually Dharma. And then this is actually the symbol that Dharma Garden can be also educational and inspirational projects that is about our responsibility towards nature and how we can maintain and balance within ecosystem. So if we see here, we can see like actually circular system that maybe it was before it was like that on Earth, and maybe if we want to go like somewhere into a new planet, it also can be a new system. So I think that's it from me and host Natural Fibre, Suksma, and thank you.
Thanks so much, Irene. Our final speaker for panel 2 is Soe Yu Nwe. Soe Yu Nwe is a ceramics artist from Myanmar. Her experience of living cross-culturally has inspired her to reflect upon her own identity through making and conceiving it as a fluid, fragile, and fragmented entity. She transfigures her emotional landscape by depicting nature embodied in parts in her artworks to ponder the complexities of individual identity in a rapidly changing globalized society. Please welcome Soe Yu, who will talk about her work Pearlescent White Snake, which speculates on nature's potential for metamorphosis through the snake as a mythological symbol.
Hello everyone, my name is Soe Yu Nwe. Thank you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to share my work. So I'm an artist from Myanmar. In my work I talk about nature, mythology, and the idea of metamorphosis. Some themes and interests that I explore in my work is using the snake as a self-symbol to explore cultural identity and also female identity. I use nature anatomy in the work to articulate this idea of transformation, metamorphosis, and also hybridizing nature, human, and animals. I'm inspired by Buddhism, animism, and folklore, and when I visit temples in my country, I also explore the myths around them in the work. So this is an example of my work, the snake, and I put a lot of emphasis on the heart, the interiority of the space, of the animal. In the beginning of my work, I was inspired by these spirit houses in Myanmar. Spirits are called net in Myanmar, and they are these street shrines on the street that you see, and they are outdoor, cared by random people, or sometimes with no fixed sort of guardian. It's believed that there are spirits that resides in the tree, so Bodhi tree are not allowed to cut in Myanmar. So you'll see a lot of rundown building where the tree is fixated in the building. And these shrines are very natural. It's a very intriguing image for me because you see small houses which are hand-built, man-built, and nature in one. Sometimes you see Buddha, sometimes you see animistic gods, sometimes you see Hindu gods in these shrines, so they're very interesting for me. So this is an example that you see in Thailand. They also sort of have the similar belief. You see the tree growing and engulfing the shrine, and it's sort of run down, letting the nature taking its course. So I really like this idea of chaos and peace at the same time in one imagery. This is the first piece I made inspired by the house, the spirit houses. I made my own spirit house. It's part open, part closed, and I have these compartments of emotions on the side. There's this tree growing out of it, inspired by the temples that you see in Cambodia, maybe. And inside there's the person nurturing the heart. In grad school, I wanted to grow my work. So the house you saw was very small, very self-contained, and I wanted to grow because everyone else around me is growing artistically. And I changed the material that I use by adding fiber to strengthen the clay. And I started using the clay differently. Instead of building solid structure, I use it as line to draw out the space. So it's a gesture of a house, reaching out like branches in a tree, but very house-like still. These more anatomical-like pieces that explore the idea of rootlessness, feeling away from your own culture, being displaced. This idea of sort of feeling alienated is in the work. This is a piece I made in grad school, big pieces that sort of they look like organ, they look like blood vessels, they look alien-like in a way, but also organic. So the idea of metamorphosis is central to the work that I make. Everything is transforming, changing, hybridizing with sort of these separate imageries that I try to combine together. The change is often biological and abrupt and violent in a way. Some pieces that I make changing the body. So this piece is inspired, I use the female body and transfigure it and change it, making it partly open, part closed, so it's a porous body. And the anatomy is also changing its form. The spine is sort of moving and growing like a snake. And another piece, the spine's growing out of the body, moving like a plant, in a way, depending on how you see it, and hybridizing it with tree, leaves, the idea of nature. This piece I quite like in a way that it's sort of chaotic and balanced and emotionally chaotic on one side, but you have this hand gesture nurturing what it's holding, and there's this anatomy, the heart that's in the piece. Another piece I made, this looks alien-like in a way. I guess because of the change, it's so sudden, so violent, so fast, that's happening in the body. These pieces I wanted to make, I wanted to have a woman giving birth, but I couldn't finish it. I wanted her body to look like snake, so it's elongated, but I worry that it might collapse, so it's a little bit shorter than what I imagined. Again, this idea of changing and reconfiguring, remodeling the body into something plant-like, snake-like. This piece is an outdoor installation where I make with clay but not fire, combining it with nature, merging it with the dead trees around it. I started getting interested in the snake as using it as a self-symbol because I was born in the year of the snake, and I wanted to use something other than myself to explore the idea. And also talk about my culture in a way. From Myanmar, and we have snake temples, and these are not just snake-themed temple, but the temples itself houses the snake. So the snakes are Burmese python, and people believe that they are the reincarnation of previous monks who lived there. And I visited two, one in Tonde and one in Mandalay. So these are some images from the temple. And also the snake as a symbol is have this idea of transformation, regeneration, sort of birth and death at the same time, like this symbol of Ouroboros where the snake is eating its tail, eternally changing, timeless, longevity, this kind of ideas. Also, Legend of the White Snake. Growing up as a Chinese in Myanmar, we've seen like movies about this myth about this white, immortal, powerful spirit that fell in love with the human, and the story sort of her fight for her love for this human, and eventually she ended up being imprisoned in this temple. Also, another snake-inspiring snake figure is the Nwe. She is the creationist goddess in some of her Chinese mythology, and I'm interested in finding these sort of positive way of depicting the snake, because the West has sort of demonized the snake as an imagery in a way. It's like evil, wicked, this creature, not as cool as a dragon. So yeah, I try to find like positive myths to sort of emphasize in the work. And there's exploring the idea of a snake. I was also interested in a dragon, not the Chinese dragon because they're very masculine, like in a way, but the Burmese dragon, the Naga, where it's more serpentine. They live in the underworld. They guard the treasures, but they're not like flashy and outward. So there's this temple near my house that I used to live in, Bodhram Pagoda, where there is a dragon goddess shrine. And actually the shrine itself is not big, but it attracts a lot of crowds. So I was surprised to go in and see it, and you see a lot of people worshiping this goddess. And the way they worship is not from afar, but you go near her and you sort of whisper to her what you want, and she fulfills it. It's like she's very powerful. People believe that. And she's believed to be the reincarnation of a dragon. But she was actually a real person. This person lived over 100 years ago. She was a real human being, and she was a devoted Buddhist. And when she died, people remember her, and they sort of mythologize her into this powerful goddess and build a shrine for her. Attracts a lot of Thai tourists. So you see people whispering to her. And next to her, there is like a small shrine with a traditional statue of the dragon goddess, the dragon queen. See all the offerings, very festive. And another really interesting myth around this pagoda is like during our previous dictator, Dan Shui, often one day dreamt that this goddess haunted him. It makes him have nightmares. So the next day, he comes to the temple and have the officials handcuffed her every night. And a taxi driver told me this, and I was like, "Is it real? Is it legit?" And I try to find a way to verify the story, and I found this article writing about the rumors, which is funny. This is my piece in the show, The White Pearlescent Snake. A lot of the pieces that I was making is very colorful, red, green, and this piece is, I wanted it to be just white because it's inspired by this white spirit, immortal snake in the legend. And so I didn't want any color to sort of take it away, and I added the pearlescent sheen to sort of convey her otherworldliness. These are the previous snakes I've made in grad school, inspired by the Burmese python. A lot of focus on the interior, the heart. The piece is a little bit violent in a way that's open, but it's also very jewelry-like in a way. So attracting you because of the shiny sheen, but also the idea of opening the body is kind of violent. So this is also snake, but done in a different way through ceramic firing. This one looks petrified, looks like petrified wood, fossils, burnt. This piece looks monstrous and a little bit like it's come out of science fiction because of the metallic sheen and mirror-like glaze used. This piece is the Burmese python, and it will be shown at the British Museum in November. This piece is being shown in Bangkok right now. This piece is different in the way that I approach the segment. It's not just cut, but it's growing out of the cuts. So it's inspired by these regenerative power that some animals have, like lizard or flatworms, where they can just grow out of wherever the injury happened. And some scientists think that, these worms can live so long, like researching them for longevity. These pieces, this is the snake, but the heart is the flower. Oh no, the head is the flower. And these are the pieces inspired by the dragon queen. The head is casted from a Burmese traditional puppet depicting the Naga queen. It's open and like flower buds or mouth. So changing and transforming. This piece is inspired by Nwe. So this piece is in the collection of the Queensland Art Gallery, and they're showing it right now in another show also. So, yes, more pieces that change sort of the traditional imagery into something that's plant-like. In this piece, the hen is morphing into flowers and plants. This piece feels like some kind of sea creature in a way. And right now, I will be participating in a Thailand Biennale, so I'll show you some of the pieces that I'm working on also. I'm working at Doi Din Dang Pottery in Chiang Rai, built by a Chiang Rai artist, and collaborating with BGC Glass Studio in Bangkok. Making more serpent pieces, but this without the head or the tail, sort of just the middle section where it's morphing and growing. And this piece is a botanical woman thinking about it giving a birth. They're large pieces. And another inspiration for me is these glass models in Harvard. They're made by the German father and son duo, the Blaschkas. And these are actually made of glass. You will not believe it, the level of detail and the craftsmanship gives us a glimpse of how just over 100 years ago, people used to study science. Like they're used as models for people who want to study botany. And they made these sea creatures also, very detailed. So I started using glass in my work. This serpent has glass pieces, where it changes form. The idea of, formlessness without flesh, just spirits, is something that I want to explore in the work. This piece, I experimented with adding inclusion in the glass. This is actually my own hair, incorporated in the glass. The glass burned it because you're working with something that's 500 degrees maybe. So everything that's encased is the ash. Making glass flowers, collaborating with BGC Glass Studio. Some parts I made, some parts they make, and I assemble them together. Making hands, I love glass hands because it's like, very poetic. And these look like scenes from a science fiction if you remove the background. It's a teamwork. And I try to merge the two hands, have it grow like branch. So This is my last slide. Thank you so much.
We'll invite Soe Yu to take a seat on stage and also bring Sputniko and Irene back, and welcome Honor, who is going to be moderating this panel and taking questions from the floor. I'm handing the time over to you, Honor.
Hello. Wow, what amazing presentations from incredible kind of artists and experimenters. I've got some questions that I would love to ask our speakers, but I'm also very conscious that we have some of the artists who are participating in the exhibition kind of in the house today. So we have Etsuko sitting over here. Somewhere in the audience we have Anne Samart as well, and we have all of the curators kind of the exhibition here. So if any of them at any point would like to ask any questions, I would love to take them because I'm very interested to hear their perspectives on what we've just heard today. But I'm going to start us off. This is a question to kind of get us warmed up. So it's kind of one for all of you. Our session is entitled New Myths. It's very much inspired by the section of the exhibition where we're thinking about how myths can be made real for a kind of contemporary age. So I'm going to ask each of you, what's one of your favourite myths from your culture? And could you imagine how science or technology or modern conditions could make it real? And so since you spoke so beautifully about a number of myths in Burmese culture, maybe you could take that question first. If you could make one myth real.
Since I presented in my presentation, my favorite myth is probably the Dragon Queen. She was a real person, mythologized. After maybe 50, 60 years later, it becomes the new myth. How would I make her real? Actually, because of my participating in this show, I sort of dream of an installation where you can whisper to her, and the machine will collect her whisper. So you sort of get a glimpse of someone's interior life and their secret wishes. Some of them may be obvious, like wealth, love, but you might find other things interesting.
I love that. That is so beautiful. Irene, so much of Honk's work in some ways kind of engages with the mythologies and the traditions, these syncretic traditions of Yogyakarta. So what would be your take on that?
My favorite is actually because I live in Yogyakarta and I grew up in Yogyakarta. My favorite is actually the Soe Queen. It's also the reincarnation of Lakshmi, some people also believe. And I don't know how to make it alive because he is still alive. If people in Jogja believe she's actually always be the wife of all the kings in Jogja, and everything is reverse to her. But I think it's representing her as an energy, as an infinity energy that. I think it's also shown in our work that we show that it's there is an infinity in the system and in the circular system.
That notion of circularity,
yes.
That we also touched on in the
yes.
press conference.
Yes.
Sputniko, I know you've already done this, so it may seem like a little bit of a redundant question, but you have to go back to mythology and pick a new one.
Yeah, so I was thinking it's a hard question because I already made it into a work, my favorite mythology. But if I had to think of one, in Japanese mythology, there are many narratives of if you're nice to animals or cranes. So there's a mythology of a man saving a crane who's hurt, and afterwards the crane comes back as a human and does, you get the good karma back. So it might be interesting to look at those mythology when we start to understand communication, like interspecies communication better. But yeah, it was a hard question.
I like that, like, and sending generosity kind of out into the world. I'm going to throw this open to the floor. I know we've got many curators, artists, academics kind of here, and I'm sure we've got questions. So, any hands? Anyone wants to kick us off? Okay, we have one in the front here.
Hi, I thought I would take the opportunity to ask Sputniko, because it's very rare that, we have somebody, who dabbles in, science and arts, because you're maths and arts background and with music, and also somebody from the East and West. So it's with regards to a bit of like sci-fi thing, because there's this talk about like artificial general intelligence and, consciousness, and like, what's your take on that? Like, thanks.
Well, like what's your? I'm curious because what I'm seeing recently is really like mind-blowing and a little bit makes me uncomfortable. But at the same time, there are faculty meetings I wish AI would attend instead of me. I hope the other professors don't hear this, but there are many things like faculty meetings or boring meetings that I'm supposed to be there, but I don't do anything. I wish I could make an AI avatar and just be there for me. So I can see AI making my life much better, but then I can think of all these different scenarios that it could go the other way. So how do you feel? How do you feel?
That was how I would have asked the question Adrian asked in his last panel, which is what kind of science fiction kind of trope do you think is already being made real? And I certainly feel like we're living in the age of her now. Like when I talk to ChatGPT, it's starting to get very eerily close.
So real. And then now Meta released like these visuals like that's like Kendall Jenner, Naomi Osaka, and I could imagine just 3 years how do we think of loneliness even? Like there are maybe it's a positive thing because loneliness is a cause of a lot of health issues. I think in Britain, the government's trying to tackle loneliness. So is AI going to relieve some of that or not? So, yeah, it's a big theme. I don't have answers, but this is like something I really want to dig into personally myself.
We live in interesting times. Other questions from the floor? Otherwise, I've got some, but I really do want to give you the opportunity if you'd like to ask any of our speakers anything. Okay, so I'm going to bring this back to the topic of our session. We're talking about new myths, and one sort of commonality I can kind of see in all of your work is metamorphosis. It's explicitly dealt with, I think, in your practice, Soe Yu, but also I see this in your work, kind of Sputniko. You're working with genetically modified silkworms. You have a deity which is creating kind of acts of terraforming. So I want you to talk to me about what metamorphosis, kind of means to you in your work, and whether it's a topic that you're explicitly connected to. So maybe first, Soe Yu, could you speak a little bit more about why metamorphosis is such a strong thematic for you?
I think for me, it's due to living in a lot of cultures, and you have this constant shift that you have to go through in terms of language, thinking, and also fitting in. So the changes in growth and sort of the alien-like forms sort of comes from that kind of feeling of maybe not fitting in or not understanding your surrounding, or resulting from like growing up in different places. Me studying in the US for 6 years, American culture is very different from Asia, a very extroverted sort of culture. So yes, I feel like this theme is central to the work because of this yearning for change, constant change, to be better or to fit in or things like that. I actually also see it in, since we were talking about science fiction, and I have a housemate that was a big science fiction geek, and in her house we see all the science fiction imagery, and the work that she make is also about transformation. She has this fictional company where you can go in and transform your body. And I could feel something that we have in common is this idea of alienation. You know, she grew up in the South, you know, very conservative, but she's interested in foreign culture, you know, science fiction, and me, you know, Asian in America. Yeah.
Fascinating. Irene, what's your take on transformation, metamorphosis? So much of the work you do is literally doing that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, I think I really like about to make the invisible and to make it into like maybe like more visible, because I grew up in Java, and then there are so many things actually that we believe like it is in the way of life, but it's all like invisible. Like when we're talking about that, and we always like river, like what is it like the invisible, and how actually it is like can be present in our daily life right now. For example, with the AI, like how actually it can. Maybe it can merge, or this is another, maybe that is another AI, for example, like the way like all the rituals doing, maybe that is technology, maybe like the way they do it, or maybe that is like what we call it, whatever, like maybe it is science or non-science, but that there is this invisible things that surround us that actually maybe waiting to be visible, or we don't see it, but we don't want to see it, but it's actually like surround us.
Do you have any specific thoughts on metamorphosis and transformation, Sputniko?
From my background, growing up in Japan as half British, half Japanese, I never fit in the Japanese school. Walking down streets in Tokyo, people think I'm completely non-Japanese foreigner. And then, so there's this East and West, and then being like one of the few female in studying science, and then in the arts. And so I think because I never fit in the box, I was always interested in the boundaries and transformation since I was very young. And then another reason why I'm drawn to transformation is that I think it's similar to the discussion of AI that you just brought up. When something is changing a lot, I think it makes a lot of us uncomfortable, but then it gives you a good opportunity to understand some things a lot more. So in terms of AI, it's making me uncomfortable, but then it started making me reflect about loneliness, and also actually, interestingly, human rights and democracy, because I think our idea of having human rights and democracy is still quite new, and it's largely quite thanks to the Industrial Revolution, when we need people to run businesses as a society. But what if we don't need people anymore? Are we going to be having like the same ideas of human rights and freedom as we did before, which is a scary thought, but those things comes in my mind when I think about the change. So change is scary, but it makes you understand some things better. So that's how I see it. Yeah.
Thank you. And actually this kind of segues quite nicely into the next topic I want to explore, and this one specifically for Irene and Sputniko. So Soe Yu mentioned that her housemate kind of was making artwork about a fictional business that could help people kind of change their bodies. And so obviously this next question is kind of directed to yourself, Sputniko, where you've recently started a business that's specifically kind of looking at kind of women's health, but also to you, Irene, because so much of the work that HOMF do is about creating kind of social innovation, often for a very practical goal to help farmers, to help the community. So I want to ask you both a question around, you know, what role you feel you have as people who predominantly kind of identify as artists to create businesses or social innovations that are about creating real world change. Irene, do you want to start us off on this? Because I'm really fascinated with the work that you've, for instance, done with the agricultural community in Georgia.
Yeah, how was that? I think like because we started as a collective like after the Reformation, which is like about chaotic in our country, still chaotic under right now, but it was very chaotic, and then like what you can do as an artist, and then what you can do also when you work together, if you collaborate together, and then I think that's also how it makes a lot of collectives in Indonesia at the same times, for example like Ruang Rupa and then Taring Padi and so on. That's actually like towards that, like it's not art, it's not just stand for arts, and then like and the infrastructure itself, like I think for arts it was not good that time, so we try to create ourselves, and then that's actually it's more engage more to the people, and then that's how we actually to make a work actually, and then we should sing our environment, and then the people surround us, and then that's actually how HOMF started to make a lot of social innovation, because it's a lot of people actually engage only in one project, and then we have to give it back to the society.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is what you're doing to quite a large extent now, Sputniko, with your new business, Cradle. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how you as an artist came to want to run a
company. Yes. So, Cradle, just for people who don't know about it, I created an online platform for large corporations in Japan. And a lot of Japanese companies are trying to do like more diversity and inclusion, and also help female employees have a better environment in their workplace. So for my platform, we have educational content for women to learn about their health issues, like menstruation, menopause, how to deal with fertility treatments, the pill, and also for the whole workplace to learn about unconscious biases and diversity, equity. And I launched the service last year in April, and now we have like over 40 companies using it. Sony, NEC, Nissan, Honda, Nomura, like really big companies in Japan using, and it's growing so much that we started preparing to go public in Japan, IPO. So this is an exciting challenge for me, being a CEO of a women like startup, women's health. And the reason why I made this company was that I created a menstruation machine in 2010 in RCA. And all these years, I've been always interested in like technology, gender inequality, women's body health issues. And I was lucky as an artist to be able to make work, show work in museums, or also write about in media. But I felt like I wanted to go beyond the museum space. And interestingly, like the startup culture had this boom in Tokyo, especially around 2015, 2016. And I made friends with a lot of technology startup CEOs who are almost my age. And the way they were working, they would come up with a crazy idea about the future and a business plan, and then they raise funds and they raise a team and they work on it. Kind of almost, like not exactly the same, but similar to how I worked or how artists work. like some of the ideas are pretty wild ideas about the future. And I thought that's interesting, like, because I always hated capitalism. Capitalism has so many issues. I never wanted to go close to it. But it felt like if I understand capitalism, how it works, and if I use it to my advantage, can I use this tool as a tool to make a positive change for society, especially about gender inequality and technology, which is very bad in Japan. And so I decided to, I met a co-founder. She's also an entrepreneur. And together we wrote the business plan, and she helped me with all like stock options and raising funds. And we made the company, and now it's like going like successful. But I think, especially in this area of tech and science, like creating a business is more democratized recently. I don't think it's as complicated or difficult as I thought it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And especially like NFT, blockchain, Web3, there are artists who are also kind of going in the sort of business area. But like business, our idea of businessman, capitalism, especially growing up and going to art school, like we hated them, but maybe it's good to understand and use it to artists' advantage. And I think we're gonna see more merge between those fields, possibly. Yeah.
And it's good to kind of infiltrate those systems as well, you know, as artists and also as women. So we're at kind of time for asking kind of final questions. So if you've been saving up a question for us because this is your last moment, I'm going to do a quick scan before I sum up. Okay, so I'm going to sum up with one last question, a little bit connected with kind of Sputniko sharing, and this is a question for everyone on the panel. The exhibition that you're all in is very much a exploration of the synthesis and the interconnection between science fiction and Asian kind of traditional mythology and belief systems. I'd like you to talk about how you feel that manifests kind of in your work, or if you feel it manifests in your work. And maybe we could start with you, Irene, because in so many ways I think your work kind of embodies kind of that crossroads very, very beautifully.
Yes, I think like because we started like to see like actually like when we talk about science fiction, it's usually like you see like in the future, and you see like the future like in the galaxy and so on, which is actually it's good in a way, like you as an artist, and then you have to see the future. But it's also like to looking back, it's also good, and then it's actually like I love like I said at the press conference actually, like this is kind of like a reverse. It is kind of something like circularity, and then maybe the world is also live in the circulars. And I think to understand actually the nature and then what we live right now in the context of to see the future or seeing like the future, like we have to see also in the circular system, and then like to see to the back and then see what we belong or we ever belong or we ever learn, and then we can see, I think, like to the future.
Amazing. So I remember when we were discussing this question, you were saying that initially you were quite surprised that you were invited to be part of an exhibition about science fiction and kind of Asian contemporary art. So I'd be very curious to have your take on that question.
Yes, I was very surprised to be invited to participate in this exhibition because I never had my work contextualized in this sense. But thinking back though, like for example in grad school, my housemate's work was placed right next to mine, and her work is very science fiction inspired. So I feel like there's this very strong connection to the idea of metamorphosis, change, but also the idea of imagining something that's very alien, otherworldly, disregarding the reality of it all and embracing the fiction and imaginative side of it. I don't know if that answers the question.
It does. Yeah. Thank you so much. And Sputniko, this is a form you've been experimenting with for much of your practice. So how would you take that question? So the question is, the exhibition is all about the interconnection between kind of Asian spiritual beliefs and science fiction. And how would you feel that you as a practitioner kind of
about those two? There are many answers, but one answer I like to give is that, so in my work, I'm looking at mythologies and also science fiction, future. But personally, I feel that it's important to understand and embrace our mythologies to better tackle the future and the new technologies. But at the same time, there are certain mythologies in Asia that is stigmatizing women, especially in terms of women's health and body, because menstruation has many taboos associated in mythology. And I did a research on the percentage of women who go through epidural birth, so giving birth with less pain, with anesthesia. And I think in Finland, about 89% of women take epidural birth. France is about 85%. And most of Europe, you could get epidural birth. That's like the standard choice. And in Singapore, I think that goes down to about 50%. And if you go to Japan, that's only 6% of women choose epidural birth. And China, 10%. And the reason why it's so low in Japan, 6%, is that in Japanese mythology or values, it's seen that women need to go through that pain to be a better mum. So if you use epidural, that's a big no-no. And so, parents go against it, or your partner goes against it. So doing my business, I feel frustrated with these mythologies. So it's good to, so I have a distance, I like to understand them, but then I don't always completely, I think mythologies need to update with our times and society. So that's my answer.
It's a beautiful answer, and I think the monks that you met at the Shinto temple with their IT protection are a good example of how myths can be updated in a way that feels a little more kind of in harmony with kind of our technocultural society. This feels like a really lovely note to end this panel on, and I'd really like to ask you to give a huge round of applause for our speakers today, Soe Yu Nwe, Irene Agrivina, and Sputniko. We're coming to the end of the Radical Imaginations kind of symposium, and before I hand back to Zin for last words, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of you for spending your Saturday afternoon with us. I see many familiar faces in the crowd, and we're so pleased that you came today. I also wanted to remind you that Radical Imaginations kind of is one of the first major events in our season of science fiction, which kicks off with New Eden, but will continue for the next 6 months with our next exhibition, yet to be announced, and an incredible season of science fiction films, our new VR gallery project, which launches at the end of this week, and a whole slate of other programs. So please stay tuned and join us for our future events. But for now, I'll hand back to Zin.
I'm going to echo on the sentiments and say that we're so grateful for the community of artists and collaborators who have come into the fold of the symposium today. So Sputniko, Irene, Soe Yu, but also Daryl and Gail, Daryl and Debbie. and Sushan, who spoke in the earlier panel. Thank you for your propositions on new ways of being in the world and with the world and walking through the world, but also radical imagining as something that is so vital to us as being human. And wonderful thanks also to Gail, to Jerome and Joel for your joint presentation, and honor and Adrian for contributing to the program. There is an amazing team always working behind the scenes on every program, and I hope you allow me to take some time to acknowledge them. My education colleague Reina, who has been very present at the front of house and looking after everyone. Our museum services colleagues right at the back, who have been expertly managing the technical delivery of this program. And my public programs colleague Jia Ying, who is really the backbone of the symposium and the producer for the event. And although Soe Yu's clay bouquet masterclass is sold out tomorrow, we have an extended season of films accompanying the exhibition, which Honor had mentioned, that's been curated by Jerome and Rachel. It opens tomorrow with Jut Chun's Unidentified, a speculative fiction film about our yearning for belonging and connection in a world that looks increasingly less like home. We're so pleased again to be joined by all of you at the opening of New Eden. We hope you get to see the exhibition. Come for the programs if you can. And for now, thank you so much for continuing to be a part of ArtScience Museum's story. And we hope you continue to stay safe and well. And we hope to see you back at the museum again.